And hello, everybody. This is the video presentation for my research proposal. After having gotten feedback from peers and been peer reviewed by a fellow student and also Professor Salahuddin. So the new change title based on feedback is called Lying and Other Poor Character Reaction to Cognitive Dissonance. So one of the critiques was that I didn't really describe what or give many examples of poor character reactions or did it really make it clear. So I put it right in the title. So lying is one example of something you could do in reaction to cognitive dissonance that demonstrates that you have poor character. And poor character, of course, means basically low morals, lacking in ethics, and a good character would be honest and forthright and do things like just simply admit that we're wrong when we're wrong. So let's get into this. Um, so up here, we have a little stretched out picture from the Divergent movies and books, and I chose that because it turned out that 65% of people in Stanley Milgram's research experiments demonstrated poor character as they allowed themselves to do things that were unethical just because some authority figure told them to. So, and what I really want the research to be about more so is the 35% that stood their ground, did not obey the authority, but ended up doing the right thing. So, anyway, inspired by the work of Leon Festinger and Stanley Milgram, this research is intended to find a small area between the two researchers that has not quite been addressed specifically. Where Festinger discovered and named cognitive dissonance and reported some of the responses to it, like preaching, for example, or proselytizing was one response to cognitive dissonance. Milgram showed to what extent people would go to be obedient to authority, and being obedient to authority in that scenario was actually an act of dissonance, what they call dissonance reduction. So this study will examine the beliefs we hold onto based on emotion and how people will defend an irrational belief to the point of lying or doing other unethical things like attacking the character of the messenger and doing all sorts of other things that we're not going to talk about. But just to prove themselves and their organizations or their teams, their tribes correct. The audience for this study will be academics, organizational psychologists, students of cultic studies, ex-members of cults, and the military. It is not expected that these studies would be of much interest to the general public. So the research question is cognitive dissonance at play in the defense of irrational beliefs? And if so, does cognitive dissonance alone account for a rational belief that is adhered to such an extent that one will lie to protect it? And again, the lying is as I put it, poor character response to cognitive dissonance. The lying, that is it. To protect it or allow harm to come to loved ones just to remain faithful to it, even if it costs the lives of loved ones. So I juxtapose the lying, which is probably on the low end of bad things that you can do to defend your beliefs. But on the other end of the spectrum, well, heck, wars have been fought over beliefs, haven't they? So we know that humans, unfortunately, will go to great extent just to justify a belief, and it'll end up costing lives and not saving lives. So I think that's interesting. Um, my hypothesis is that cognitive dissonance, the feeling that a person has, is not the issue, but more so it is the character of the individual and how they respond to the uncomfortable, dissonant feeling in their heads that makes them dig in their heels and stand their ground. This, I believe, is a form of sociopathy akin to pride, arrogance, selfishness, or maybe even as serious as narcissism. So, and I have to put a note here, and this is one of the things that I wanted to lay out further in response to my feedback, And I want to just say this, that this research has nothing to do and no interest in changing anyone's beliefs. And if you think that, you're not getting it. It is the belief of the author that everyone has the right to believe whatever they want. So for example, one of my best friends of my entire life, a guy I've known since I was a kid, he's a flat earther. And I guess in the beginning when he finally told me he was a flat earther, I did a little bit of arguing with him, and after a while I just realized, he's made up his mind, and I'm not I don't have the type of science background that I could actually prove to someone that the world is round. I mean, when you think about it, we all pretty much believe the earth is round because other people told us. To actually prove it mathematically, that takes like very expensive instruments and a lot of money to do that. So I just stopped trying, and I still hang out with him, and I'm okay. I don't care that he believes that the Earth is flat. We have a lot of other stuff in common, so we never had to have to get into that really. So no, this is not about changing people's beliefs. So get that thought out of your head. It is only the psychological processes of resorting to lies in order to protect a belief that is of interest. So, for example, if my friend just made stuff up out of the blue that were just total fiction, just to prove to somebody that the world is flat, I guess I would have a problem with that. So there are no specific beliefs that are being targeted here, and the experiments proposed will end by disclosing that the arguments against a person's belief were hypothetical, non-specific, such that the subject may retain his or her beliefs exactly as they were when they entered into the experiment. This is not a Steven Crowder experiment. Of course, Steven Crowder is the guy that goes around saying, prove me wrong, prove me wrong. That is not me. That's not this. Okay. So, all right. So the literary basis is Meet Leon Festinger. We're going to say Meet Leon Festinger, and that is a picture of Leon Festinger with his super high tech instruments behind him. I don't know what those instruments do. The research I propose will piggyback on top of that of Leon Festinger, the researcher that coined the phrase cognitive dissonance. Festinger infiltrated a flying saucer cult that had prophesied the apocalyptic coming of aliens in the 1950s. And remember, do they have the right to believe in aliens? Of course they do. Nobody's saying that they don't, and we're not trying to change their minds either. His interest was why members of the group did not leave the group when the prophecy was disconfirmed by the passing of the date chosen for the alien arrival. So they prophesied that aliens would come and there'd be some sort of Armageddon situation. And of course, that didn't happen. And so are we saying that they're bad people? No, we're not. But it is interesting that their prophecies were 100% disconfirmed. They can't wiggle out of that. They said that something was going to come out of the sky. It didn't come. You would think that all the members of that group would be like, okay, this is obviously false. I'm going to go do something else. But no, a few people did that, but the majority stayed actually. And Leon Festinger found that members instead renewed their commitment to the cult and the membership and the membership actually grew after a small exodus at first. So they say a false prophecy, and the result is the group got bigger and stronger and more closely knit. So it's almost like you tell a false prophecy and there's benefits to lying, basically, according to the research. That's what it seems like. So I find all that interesting, and that's why we're here. Literary basis, meet Stanley Milgram. That's Stanley Milgram again by a bunch of electronic instruments. Stanley Milgram did experiments in the 1960s that demonstrate the average person will do real harm to another individual if told to do so by an authority figure. That's scary. It was shown that the proximity to a person receiving the shock made it more difficult for the participant to obey the order to shock the learner. What other mental rationalizations were at play that would make a person more or less likely to harm another person at the behest of an authority figure? That's the question, and hopefully we'll learn something about that. Do beliefs about authority affect a person's willingness to obey any order, no matter if it's ethical or not? So yes, some of these people might have been trained by their parents to just always obey the person in the uniform. Always, no matter what. Don't think, don't don't analyze whether something is really right or wrong. Just do it. Yeah, a lot of people have been raised that way, so it might have something to do with it. Meet Travis Prultz. Travis Brooks is the author of a paper entitled The Psychology of the Absurd: How Existentialists Addressed and Succumbed to Extremist Beliefs. Brooks provides a connection between cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger, and obedience to authority, Stanley Milgram, and extreme or absurd beliefs. So when we say absurd beliefs, of course, that's subjective. Who am I to say that a belief is absurd? I probably got some absurd beliefs according to somebody else. It's subjective, and yes, it's judgmental, but it's still interesting that people would have beliefs that are demonstrably false and yet still cling on to them in spite of plenty of evidence out there to the contrary. Brooks provides a clue as to why a person will resort to absurdities and lies to defend their beliefs in the face of disconfirming as evidence. The belief that beliefs are sacred. That's very interesting. So I cite myself as an example of someone who has lied to protect my beliefs. And I'll just give you a quick story about that. When my first year in college, I was actually still a member of this cult group. And so I still had all the indoctrination in my head, and I still felt constantly attacked by all the professors and students at college that had different beliefs. And I was in the class called Philosophy of Ethics, and the lecturer, an amazing lecturer, he really could wow. I mean, he really breaks things down and helps you to think it through. And then you can find out through those thinking processes that what you actually believe deep down in your heart without reference to what some religious group or religious leader is telling you. So anyway, that one day it was a lecture about abortion, and his lectures were a lot of discussion too. So you raise your hand anytime you want to say anything. And so he was really, he really broke down abortion and gave an argument. He gives arguments for and against everything, right? But he really made it seem like even if you don't believe in abortion, at least it shouldn't be legal and it shouldn't be considered murder or something like that. Well, in my religious faith, abortion was considered murder and life was considered to have started at conception. But he really proved that idea wrong in my mind. And I just felt just absolutely devastated, like a little confused. So what did I do? I raised my hand and I told to the teacher in front of like 100, is one of those really big lecture rooms. I'm like, yeah, but this biology textbook that we have in my other class says that conception is like the magic moment, right? I just made that up. That was a lie. I felt like my ideas had been completely disproven and I just couldn't let it stand. And the only argument I could think of was just a straight up lie. And no, and then he looked at me like funny, like, that doesn't sound like something a biology textbook would say. So I think he really absolutely knew I was lying. And but why did I do that? What was the psychological, what was I trying to defend here? You know what I mean? So if it really turns out that there's the idea of life begins at conception is false, then I can't make it true by making up some lie. So, and also another example of a group making up lies to support a belief is the organization called Answers in Genesis. And they have made up many lies based on their need to make them up, basically. And they have done things like there's known dinosaurs out there that had feathers, for example, and but when they made their little toy figurines, I guess, at their place over there in Missouri, they purposely did not put feathers on it. Why? Because if they had feathers, somehow that proves them wrong. So it wasn't like they found some evidence that the feathers weren't there. It's just that it didn't match up with their worldview. So they made up a lie and they created some statues of these beasts that was not based on anything other than the fact that they wanted it to be true. Do they have the right to do that? Sure, sure. Do I care about changing them? Absolutely not. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm going to keep saying that because people are going to get that idea. They've also made up species that have never existed because it would make them look better or something like that. So those are lies, you know, and yeah, calculated lies, and we're going to find out hopefully why people do that. Um, Theoretical basis is basically cognitive dissonance, and here I have a picture of ripples from possibly dissonant music, sound waves going through water, and what it sort of looks like. Excuse me. Cognitive dissonance is the foundation for this proposed study. Cognitive dissonance is a feeling. People don't know that so many times. They use the term cognitive dissonance and they don't realize that it's an actual feeling. Cognitive dissonance is the feeling that results when one is confronted with disconfirming evidence for a deeply held and cherished belief. Cognitive dissonance is not bad. I hear that said all the time by people. Oh, cognitive dissonance, much. No, that's if somebody says that, they don't understand what it is. Feeling cognitive dissonance is proof that your brain is working. So, feeling cognitive dissonance is one thing. Making up a lie to make that cognitive dissonance go away, that is poor character. It's a poor character response to the cognitive dissonance. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that I didn't make clear enough the first time, and it gave the wrong impression to those that were reviewing my words. So, but I got to take responsibility for how people interpret my words. So, theoretical basis, contributing factors. One, character. Character, as used in this research, refers to a person's mental and moral qualities. Good character in this research refers to a person who is ethical, honest, and forthright. Poor character in this study refers to someone who is not honest, ethical, or forthright. It is hypothesized here that a person with good character will readily admit they are wrong when presented with substantial disconfirming evidence. Super simple. All adults should be able to do that, you would think. A person with poor character will succumb to pressure from peers or authority and go to great lengths, even doing things that are immoral or unethical, to defend cherished beliefs in spite of plentiful disconfirming evidence. Theoretical basis again, processes at play. We have a picture of a guy here that looks like he's suffering from cognitive dissonance. What is he going to do next? Is he going to tell a lie? What's he going to do? Or is he going to calmly admit, hey, I was wrong, and admit that, you know, and then the cognitive dissonance will go away without him having to lie or doing something unethical. So a person's reaction to discomfort of any kind is at play here. Some people just don't have tolerance to sit with their uncomfortable feelings. And they just end up doing something rash, like telling a lie. A person's pride is at play, fear of disapproval by an authority figure or peer group, lack of curiosity, and poor character. More processes at play, relevance of Maslow. So now we're getting into some Maslow stuff, who's another theorist that every single psychologist, organizational psychologist as well, should know Maslow. A person may be stuck in the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For example, if they may still be in levels 1 through 4, which is physiological motivations, safety motivations for safety, love and belonging and esteem, right? So those are things that are associated with children or young adults, and those are the things that they strive for because they feel they need it. This may not be they so the a person that is giving in to the urge to do something unethical, like tell a lie, may not be at the highest level in fulfilling their needs, which is self-actualization. So if they are self-actualized, um, they would probably be immature enough to just admit they're wrong instead of make things up and or hurt people to try to convince them otherwise, or do extreme things like mount massive proselytization schemes and stuff like that. All those things are reactions to the cognitive dissonance. It may be an issue of maturity. I see I spelled misspelled issue there. And even if they're fully grown. So yes, there are fully grown people that are not at the level of self-actualization in Maslow's scheme there. Um, I think probably a lot of grown adults are still on the physiological and safety motivations. Um, so, just because they're older doesn't mean they're more mature emotionally and psychologically. More processes at play, the relevance of Kohlberg. Um, so this the person may not be fully developed morally according to Kohlberg's theory of moral development as well. They may still be in pre-conventional or conventional stages of moral development. They may be experiencing some impedance towards achieving post-conventional moral development. It may be an issue of immaturity, once again, even if a person is fully grown. So, a pre-conventional or conventional stages of moral development, that describes someone that can do what they're told. If there's a law, they follow it. Basically, if an authority tells them to do something, they're just going to obey and they're not going to think. It's post-conventional moral development that where you might tell a person in post-conventional moral development to do something, and they could point out to you that no, I'm not going to do that because it's immoral or unethical. Sorry, find somebody else. That's maturity. You know what I mean? So, and I was surprised that actually some of my feedback and responses actually asked the questions. Well, what's wrong with just conforming? Like, what's the big deal? And the it can be a big deal if everybody just conforms. It could be a very big deal, and that's where the Holocaust might come in, because there was a situation in the Holocaust where during the Nuremberg trials, it had come out that two little old ladies were ordered by an SS officer to lock the doors on a big barn that had been set on fire with, I don't know, hundreds of people in there. And so they did it, and all those people burned to death. And during the Nuremberg trials, their excuse was, I was just doing what I was told. But no, they were convicted and they received harsh punishment. I can't remember exactly what the punishment was, whether they got executed or whatever. But little old ladies, I'm sorry, you can't just do what you're told. It doesn't excuse you if you do something that's wrong just because somebody told you to do it. You're still at fault for doing that thing. So you will be held accountable by a future generation of people, basically. So the methods of data collection are going to be interviews, questionnaires, and literature review, examination of historical interviews on similar topics, statistical analysis during interviews. A respondent will be presented with challenging and disconfirming evidence against their most cherished beliefs. Other ploys, well, I'm not going to actually, I meant to take the other ploys like mocking and slurs against beliefs. That I'm not going to do. I got bad feedback on that too, so I meant to take that out. So forget that. Um, but yes, so there will be an effort to see to what extent a person will defend beliefs, and whether they will resort to telling some lie or something else. Special note will be taken if the respondent resorts to lies to or counterattacks that employ aggressive emotions and ad hominem attacks. So I'm going to get into that in the appendix when we get to the end, and I'm going to go through the actual uh, process in a little bit more detail. The hypothetical data, based on examination of interview, film footage, and other sources, responses are recorded and numbered. Certain phrases that amount to a yeah, but will also be rated according to emotional intensity. And actually, also I chose to, well, I looked around and apparently all the tests that I was thinking of doing, they already exist. So I found a list of standard psychological tests that really kind of reveal all of the stuff. So I didn't have to invent anything, fortunately. And I just didn't know they existed before I did the research. So the findings will show that with greater emotion and defensiveness, the more a respondent will resort to ad hominem attacks against the person providing disconfirming data, blaming the messenger, basically. Obfuscation, straw man, red herring, and appeals to authority will be made 65% more frequently as desperation ensues in the demeanor of the respondent. So that's a prediction. I don't know if that's going to be true or not. As expected, the results show that 65%, this is hypothetical, of the respondents resorted to lies, hyperbole, insults, all in the name of defending a cherished, deeply held belief. This number is significant as it is the same percentage of persons who willingly administered shocks to learners in Stanley Milgram's experiments. So it's almost like 65% of the world's population is one way and 35 another way. And I know which percentage I hope I am part of. Future research in the future, it may be advantageous to look at MRI results of persons engaged in poor character responses to cognitive dissonance. It would be advantageous as well to study if there's something in the brain of the 65% that is curable, and if so, how? Or do the 65% have something that is congenital that cannot be improved or cured? That's very interesting. So now I'm going to talk about a little bit more detail into the peer review. So the peer review said that it was unclear as to who the target audience is. I think I covered that. The target audience is I'm going to have to move this thing. So I added to the introduction that it would be mostly academics and those interested in cultic studies and the military who'd be interested in this research. The reviewer asked why one should not conform and how this points to being a poor character. Well, that question, this is apparently not made clear for the reviewer. So in other words, I didn't make it clear enough, and that's why she got the wrong idea or was a little bit confused. So hopefully I'm clearing this up now. So the study is not about why one conforms or doesn't conform. Okay, although that is of interest. But to answer the question, one would not want to conform or follow an order to murder infants, for example, because murdering infants is wrong. I already gave the Holocaust example. So if one follows an order to murder infants, that shows they're a poor character, right? But I don't even get into that level of sin, so to speak. All I'm talking about is like the beginning, like when someone tells lies, so and telling lies just to making up stories just to make yourself seem right. That's poor character right there. That's unethical. This works only if you believe it is wrong to murder infants, of course. But the reviewer did not understand the research at all because I did not make it clear. That was my fault. The study is about the lengths one will go to protect a belief. We begin with the assumption that it is wrong and of poor character to lie. Hopefully, everybody just agrees with that and I don't have to prove it. Therefore, if you lie to protect a belief, then you are of poor character by definition, according to my definition. This is the premise of the research. Also, I added the phrase lying and other poor character responses to the intro to make it clear that one major example of poor character response is lying, but there are others. The overarching connection between cognitive dissonance and blind obedience is that blind obedience is an act of dissonance reduction. So that's the connection. And I mentioned that earlier. That's the thing that really ties Stanley Milgram to Leon Festinger. I will not be getting into the topic of people who commit violence to defend a belief because that will be incorporating too broad of a field. So I'm just going to leave that alone for now, and we're gonna not going to talk about it, even though I brought it up a couple times already. But that could be something for the future to study. And why isn't this going? What did I do? I'm going to pause. Okay, not sure what happened here. Oh, now it's doing it again. Good Lord. Pause it. Um, pause. Oops. No. Slideshow. Okay. All right. Well, something's broken, so whatever. So conclusion, the evidence from this study suggests that maturity and brain development may be core reasons why some people develop such love and protectiveness towards mere beliefs. I said the word mere on purpose because I think they're just mere beliefs. This may explain why there are wars fought over beliefs. It does not seem to matter whether a person is formally educated or not. It is not a matter of intellect. It is a matter of character and ethics that makes a person more willing to consider that they may be wrong. And I have a little quote here from Ann Landers, good old Ann Landers. Maturity is the art of living in peace with that which cannot be changed, the courage to change that which should be changed, no matter what it takes, and the wisdom to know the difference. So hopefully we, you know, actually can do that. So this is my list of references, a bunch more that I found. So the questionnaire, so this is a disclaimer. It was also brought up in um, my feedback that I didn't really address a certain number of things, and this is about those things that I didn't address the first time. So the questionnaire shall be posted. This is how I'm going to advertise it. Advertising spaces to general public, colleges, churches, and political organizations would be of most interest in terms of relevance, but any who wish to take the questionnaire are welcome to. The nature of the questionnaire is the extent to which someone will go to defend their beliefs. Now, this is what I'm going to tell people who apply to take this questionnaire, and maybe we'll pay them or something like that to get them to come or something like that. But they will be informed that this research is about the extent that someone will go to defend their beliefs. They'll talk about, we will explain to them what cognitive dissonance is, so they'll know and how one reacts to uncomfortable topics and how defensive a person might become if their beliefs are challenged. So we'll just let them know right up front. The questionnaire is anonymous, so that would also came up how we're going to protect their identity. It's just going to be anonymous, period. To take this questionnaire, one must sign a release form where they acknowledge that it may be emotionally upsetting and that they are okay with that. So this hopefully takes care of that. I mean, how harmful could it be to just question a person's beliefs? I know that's what we're here to find out, aren't, isn't it? Um, oh, so to take this questionnaire, one must enter. Okay, so the questionnaire may tell you things about yourself that you don't know. That's going to be told to them. That's going to be a little way of encouraging them to maybe take a chance and try it out. The tests to be administered are the AIM test, which is about how to identify intensity of emotions. The moral character questionnaire, invented by Furr, will be given. Values and action test by Peterson and Seligman, and the integrity and honesty test. The integrity honesty test, I based it off of what I got from the website, excuse me, the government website, Office of Personnel Management. So, and here's the question. So basically, this is the questionnaire we're going to give them. So, question one, is it ever appropriate to lie? Yes or no? Have you ever told a lie? Yes or no? Did you feel justified in telling a lie? Yes or no? Would you lie to protect the physical safety of a fellow human being? Yes or no? Have you ever cheated on a test? Yes or no? Have you ever stolen something? Yes or no? If someone presented evidence to you that one of your most cherished beliefs was false or a lie, how hard would you work to dig up evidence or justification for your belief? So, and this is on a rating scale between 1 and 5. One is not at all. You wouldn't bother trying to prove it to anybody. You just go on with your day. Two is you would look into it when you have time, still not that committed. Three is you would do some light research to see if you were really wrong. Four, you would invest extensive time and resources in proving you were right. And five, you would fabricate evidence that would make you seem right and show it to the source who proved you wrong earlier, basically lying. And then finally, would you lie to protect a belief in the same way you would lie to protect the life of a friend? And maybe what I was thinking of then is the in the Holocaust how Anne Frank was saved for a period of time by living in this attic, right? Well, when the SS soldiers came by and asked the owner of the house, "Hey, are you hiding any dissidents in in your attic?" I mean, of course he's going to lie because if he told them the truth, they would kill them. So yeah, so there are times that obviously you have to lie, but it's to save a person, usually, a human being. When someone lies to protect a belief is an inanimate object. It's like a concept. It's not even as it's not even like a rock, an object. You know what I mean? Like someone lying, telling a lie to defend a rock that they found in the backyard. Who would do such a thing? So why is our beliefs worshipped essentially? Why are they held so important? Um, I don't understand. Well, I should understand it because I was like that at one point in my life, and then finally I decided to try just questioning everything and not being so attached to my beliefs and just seeing what I could find out and where it would land. And that's a scary process, and I understand why not everybody can do that, but that's just where my values land. So the quasi-Milgram experience will top this whole thing off to gauge the extent a person will go to protect a belief. So the setting would be basically, I call it the quasi-Milgram experiment because it's basically going to be very much like the Milgram experience with just a few twists. Sorry, it's not original, but in a scientific looking lab, a subject will sit next to a researcher for an interview. Subject will have been told that the research is dealing with the topic of beliefs and cognitive dissonance, like we said. And they will be informed that the process may be emotionally upsetting. So that's also part of the disclaimer. But it is a safe space to express themselves. Dialogue. The interviewer will ask the subject to tell him about his most cherished beliefs, religious or otherwise. When the researcher happens upon a belief held by the subject where he shows a particularly strong amount of emotion, and it is a belief that contains factual claims, the interviewer will say, "You know that belief can't be right because of XYZ." If the subject replies with a counter argument, the interviewer will say, "You know, I just happen to have an expert on this topic here in the lab. Let me invite him in to explain it to you." At that point, an actor dressed in a white coat, just like the Milgram experiment, like a scientist and who is holding a clipboard full of documents, will come in and state in an authoritative voice the exact phrase, "I have evidence in my clipboard right here that proves that your belief is false." this is the, this is the only phrase he will say. He will not actually present any argument at all or evidence. So, that way I'm not trying to prove anybody wrong and take their beliefs on them. There will be several actor scientists that will come in and say they are experts in different fields as the case may require. But they will all just say the same phrase verbatim. No actual argument will take place. The subject will be allowed to reply, but each time he replies with a new argument, the scientist actor will simply contradict the subject, stating he has scientific evidence that the belief is false. So, This will continue until either the subject gives up or he becomes emotional, he or she becomes emotional. Subject's comments will be recorded, and fact checkers will discern if the subject at any point resorts to lies or swearing or threats in insisting that they are correct. At the discretion of the interviewer or subject, the experiment will cease. The subject will then be debriefed, and it will be revealed that the researchers did not really have disconfirming evidence, and it was all really trying to see if the subject would resort to telling lies to defend his or his belief. Full disclosure at the end. And that is the end of my presentation. And I hope you all enjoy it and love to hear more feedback. Thank you. Uh, okay. Stop recording. Stop.